Karen Thompson-Jackson, Distinguished Service Award recipient, is just another example of, number one, what amazing people that y'all are, and that you go above and beyond for this community outside of what you do for
I hate these things. I've been getting calls since Sunday about agenda items on the agenda tonight. I want to talk to y'all about it. I don't envy y'all. Y'all have hard decisions coming up y'all have to make as far as staffing goes and who you're going to cut and who you're going to retain. But the calls I've been getting have been having to do with the reorganization of the board central office staff. From what I've been told and what I can gather, it looks like a reorganization without any actual cutting of people from the board, major cuts. But I know that I've been told by a lot of my members that they're expecting to have a lot of cuts out in the schools. Y'all know me, y'all know my background, you know I come from the military, where the staff is supposed to support the lower headquarters. In this instance, it would be the central office supporting the staff. We would never cut the organizations that are on the ground that are actually doing the work vice cutting a staff. We would always cut our staff first. And I would caution y'all in how you're looking at this cuts that are upcoming, knowing that you're still gonna need people on the ground to do the jobs. Now, like I said, I don't envy y'all at all, but I appreciate y'all giving me time to talk.
Thank you, Mr. Bales. Thank you, Rick. Okay, item number 8 is informational reports from the superintendent and his executive staff. 8A, receive, discuss mid-year data points. Dr. Pope?
Dr. Pope is on his way back in. Thank you, Dr. Pope, for coming in at the right time.
Good evening, board. Ms. Jinks will pull up the document for us. The folder you have, okay. The folder you have in front of you actually has our mid-year data. And what we use at the beginning, we take benchmarks 3 times a year. Beginning of the year, middle of the year, and we take a third one right before the state assessment. This gives us a measurement of where our students are, and with this, we have Pathways to Proficiency is the platform, the assessment that we use that mirrors ACAP. So the kids get a chance to be assessed on the level of rigor, meaning the required level of thinking for those students, the same as if they were taking the state assessment in the spring. This one was given in December. So the very first one you have is English Language Arts. And it's no longer just reading. It's reading, writing, and grammar. And it's at the level that's required of them on that particular grade level. It is state standards aligned. And I'm not gonna say it's easy, it's not hard, but it is on grade level. It's proficiency. So every school, grades 3 through 8, had to take it with ACAP standards, and 11th grade, which is our high school, was ACT standards. We know we had a great success story this past spring with all of our schools of the number of percentage those students scored proficiency compared to the year before. We had a big jump, whereas we have 3 schools being recognized in the State Department next week, I think I'm right, next week, due to their achievement results. Well, most of our schools had that big increase as well, just not as significant as those 3 schools. Tonight, I want you all to see the difference from where they were last year to where they are this year. The color in tan is 2023. The color on the chart in light green is our current year. They took it in December, so we're still using that number 2024 mid-year check. BOY 2023 is in the first column of the tan, and BOY 2024 is in the first column in the green. We're not even gonna pay attention to that tonight. We're only gonna look at MOY, which is middle of the year. Middle of the year 2023 is in the second column, and middle of the year 2024, second column in green. That number represents the kids that scored levels 3 and 4 for all state standards. That means they were proficient for the entire year for the state standards for that particular grade level. And give you an example. Last year, at this time, Arcadia had 24% of their students scored proficient in December for all the state standards that was in grades 3 through 5 in that building, levels 3 and 4. This year, they're 26% proficient. With the 2s, and y'all look at the third column. The third column says 2 plus. The 2 plus means we got some kids that are right there to be proficient for all state standards. Meaning we still got instruction. I want to remind everybody, all state standards have not been taught yet. They were tested, but they have not been taught at that point. According to last year's data, at December last year, Arcadia was 29% with their 2s. This year, with their 2s, they're 37%. And just give you, my brain is telling me, halfway mark, our goal should be double that amount. So 37% in December should look like 74% in April. So our goal is seeing Arcadia will be even higher than they were last year, and they were significantly high this past year. So tonight is informing you of where our scores are. And I'm gonna highlight some schools so you can see it, but the math is this. The kids were tested on all state standards for that grade level, even though they have not been taught all these standards. The thing about Pathways to Proficiency is the teachers can identify which standards need to be supported, which standards need to be taught. We have a metric they call stepping stones to give more activities and other strategies to get our students to be proficient. But according to this data, we're higher than we were last year. And we did make significant gains on last year. Give you an example. MLK last year was 24%, just with the 2s. This year, they're 30%. Halfway mark, look like MLK would be close to 60 or higher in the spring of 2025. Another school that gave us a highlight was Skyland. Looking at where they were last year, they were 13% mid-year just with 3s and 4s. With just 3s and 4s now, they have increased it to 22%, but with their 2 plus, they're at 31%. This is a lot of looking at where kids are versus where they have been is showing that whatever we're doing instructional is working. Those principals are identifying what strategies need to work in the classrooms. Teachers are actually teaching students. We have some kids that we know that fall into that other area, maybe the ones are low twos. We're still working with those kids too to get them where they need to go. The schools is being identified next week. Rockport Elementary School for being the top 25 school in the state, and then Southview and Woodland Forest Elementary School, they are also being identified for the most improved school in the state, top 25 most improved school in the state. Looking at their numbers, they still are higher than they were last year this time. Another school is giving an example of where Burner was last year this time. They're actually running 9% higher just with their twos, and with their with the threes and fours, and with their twos, they're significantly higher as well. So this point is showing you the data for grades 3 through 5, where we currently are, giving us a temperature check to see mid-year and what we have to do to get them where they need to go. So before I go to middle school, do we have any questions for, if you look at the last line says total, because I'm not going through all of them. I do want to tell two things. MLK moved from being a normally DC school to a now B school from last year. Look at their numbers where they are last year versus where they are this year. They've increased higher. Look at TASPA. TASPA was another school that was always been a C school since the beginning of the state report card, and now they are a B school as well, and look where they are. So we're keeping track of where our students are and where our schools are to make sure that no one is falling behind, and where our district level is as a total. We're currently at 43%. Last year we were at 37%. So even on our achievement side, we look at our report card, if we were just an elementary school district, that would be pushing us towards an A for the district. So before I go to middle school, do we have any questions for ELA, elementary?
Dr. Pope, can I interject just for
Sure.
a minute? Board members, this was sent to you previously, and I know it's a lot to take in. Remember, we'll do our data session a little bit down the road where we'll be able to really dig into a lot of this. So Dr. Pope won't review all of it. Certainly if you have questions here tonight, ask them, but we want to make sure you had this so you can do some preliminary thinking on it. And of course, in our data session, we'll go into more depth. Dr. Pope?
Any questions?
No, it's just good to see, we're moving in the right direction. That's very good.
Sure. And then even in our middle school side, we have, and we'd identified some of the areas too, but just looking at where, I'm giving you the highlight is Eastwood, TASPA, and West Lawn. Looking at their numbers are higher than where they were last year. Magnet Middle had a dip, but that's something that Dr. Childs already recognized she's working on. That's not a concern at all. Northridge Middle School just started a new program, so they had the implementation dip for the first semester, so they're all going to pull up where they are as well. But our district average will be higher for middle schools as well. With high schools, ELA, this is again ACT driven, looking where they started to where they currently are. With the level 3s and 2s, ELA world, we have a lot of work to do, and our goal is to see where we can get from grades K through 8. When they get to high school, they're stronger, so 11th grade, but goes again with ACT, those are a college assessment, but we're not making excuses, so what we're doing is we're actually teaching those standards for ACT. So ACT standards, plus we're also giving more ACT support in the school as well as some after-school programs for those kids taking ACT in 11th grade. Any questions for ELA before I go to math?
Dr. Pope, on all these numbers, is it an average of every grade within the elementary school or the middle school?
In elementary school is the average of grades 3 through 5. In middle school is the average of 6 through 8. And for high school is just 11th grade. High school has the biggest, it's like if they have 11, it's only one grade level. So there's no other combination, but all the 11th graders in that particular building.
Is there a way to get the data that shows the grades, how the grades correspond each year, so second grade to?
Yeah, so we have that too.
Okay.
We even go down to our goal is, Dr. Darius is asking us to when we have conversations with principals, we want to talk about teachers too. So we go down to the level of not just the grades, but the progression, where the teachers, where they fall. So we have that data we can present, give you that information.
Can you send that to the board, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And say, I'm sorry. Say one more time what proficient means.
Proficiency means those students are on the levels are the grades 3 through 4. They come with like different codes, like numbers, but levels 3 and 4 means those students are on grade level proficiency. They are proficient for those standards for that particular grade level. And the way Dr. Mackey kind of describes it when we were in our session was looking at proficiency, because the way proficiency is, it's calculating those kids on grade level and kids above grade level, and then it's well above grade level. So it's all those levels 3s and 4s. Any questions for ELA before we move to math? Okay. Math. The next page is dealing with math. Math is pretty much not surprising, but it gives us the evidence that we know when teachers are coached and supported that their scores can go higher. If you notice where our math scores are, our math scores now are trailing or right there with our ELA scores. And normally in our district, literacy has been leading math. Math is now, we're teaching both at the same level. We have the supports for both. And now math is pretty much, we're at 47% ELA or 46% ELA. We're 43% for math. So we're right there. Normally math is like single digit. Give you an example of where Arcadia 38% now. Thinking about double that number, that'll be the highest they've ever been in math in any history on any state assessment. So looking at our math scores are right there where our ELA scores. And looking at the data for all the schools, if you go back in where any data points for our schools, especially our Title I schools, these Title I schools and non-Title I schools, the numbers are higher than in any historical data that I can find, and I've been here 10 years. So that's our indicator of where our math is. Arcadia is one, to give you an example. TASPA is another example, 33% currently. They'll be at 66% or higher. The thing about pathways to proficiency, it drills down to the specific standard for that one child. And what we're asking to do, every teacher had to complete a standards attainment chart to actually go along with what child has attained that standard, which child has not attained that standard, and then we can dig deeper and find out if it's an isolated problem or if it's a classroom concern, and we know where our supports look like, but also intervention efforts for those students as well. This just gives more evidence and support to then let you know things like pathways to proficiency, stepping stones for our intervention teachers, and all the training and professional development that we've given to our teachers and our district staff members, that we are headed in the right direction with the numbers that we have in front of us now. We are higher than we were last year, and we're going to go higher in April of 2025. Same thing for middle school math. Chris, go to middle school. And middle school math, we had a dip at Eastwood. Eastwood go up. West Lawn was off on pacing guide, so we know what's going on with them. So that's a pacing guide issue, but they pretty much already fixed that issue for them. High school math, I'm gonna just say this: if you high school looks interesting with math than they do with ELA. They're tremendously higher in math than they are in ELA with their levels 3s and 4s. And when you look at their level 2s, level 3s and 4s in that first column, level 2 in the second column for high school ACT. And as again, these are all the standards for ACT standards. In the ACT, you really can't say grade level, is because when ACT standards go all the way down to elementary school. So some standards are supposed to be solid before they left elementary school, and then at practice all the way up. So this is where our data looks in Central High School, 33%. For what their math based on pathways of proficiency. Our goal is to make sure that when going in classrooms, we're making sure that is happening all the time to keep those numbers where they are. Same way with Northridge and with Bryant, getting them back on the pacing guide to make sure that what they're doing is they were off their pacing with their new teachers, so we know what was going on with them as well. So that support has to be put in place. But looking at our numbers with math, if I had given you all numbers last year from any formative assessment in math for ACT, those numbers for getting Central High School at the time, probably Northridge too, wouldn't be where they are. But double that for the year. Our push is they know exactly what they need to be working on. They come to the high school principals meeting with goals and what Dr. Derry asked them to bring for on the instructional side. They have an ACT plan. So our goal is pushing in as much as we can to support them, but also getting a lot of ACT practice while they're in the school, and then those after school opportunities as well. But this is a pretty much a reflection of our math scores. Look, we have some good news in math as well as in ELA as an overall district.
Dr. Pope, I was trying to read the numbers, so perhaps I missed this, but
Okay.
to me, the middle of the year, 2 plus 3, 4 from 2023 to 2024, and I'm focusing on the middle schools, seems to be somewhat of a statistical anomaly. I mean, is it such a huge drop? Am I reading that correctly?
That the year of on the ELA or math?
Math, I'm sorry.
On math, that's we have some places where the pacing guide changed, or they were not, because this is based on their pacing guide. And our pacing guide is you test it on it. What we found out, like I'll give you an example for Northridge. Northridge Middle School is an A+ school. They have adopted A+. So their pacing is not our district pacing guide. So they're not teaching according to our scope and sequence. But the district assessment is our scope and sequence. So it's the pacing guide is exactly where it should be. TASPA and Eastwood, we had to put in some additional supports because of math teachers. Those two schools, at that time, math teachers were not in the, we were doing substitutes, those things, teachers left. So math teachers at those two schools is the reason why the data looks the way it is for Eastwood and TASPA. Westlawn was not on its pacing guide as well. If we were testing them on what they actually taught, they'll be higher than what is on there. So what we recognize from middle school is for Eastwood, they did not have a teacher in grades 7th and 8th, right? Northridge is not on our pacing guide because A+ has their own pacing guide, and Northridge Middle is the only middle school that uses A+. TASPA does not have a 7th and 8th grade teacher as well, but they just started this week. But we're putting things in place to pretty much accelerate that. They were high 6th graders. It's just, so it's not a deficit there's not a deficit of skills. It's a deficit of what standards have been taught. So we're putting things in place like the TASPA after-school program, and the teacher is coming in. That same teacher will be teaching the after-school program and accelerated math for those kids to get those standards where they need to be. So that's a good catch. And Magnet Middle, they're above where they were. Yeah.
Any other questions for Dr. Pope?
So if somebody was looking at this, just trying to use percentage as in 100%, is this number based on if we were using regular percentage 100%?
Yes.
So if somebody was looking at this and said, well, Eastwood is 9% out of 100, are we failing?
If you were looking at where they were today at that point, yes, because at that point, that was 6th through 8th grade. We also got to look at how many sixth graders versus seventh and eighth graders are in the building too. We can like do for Mr. Wilson wants the number like per teacher, what their percentages are for teachers that report to show that. But at the time we had a seventh and eighth grade, they've already made since December. They already made changes in their data. Then we have another point. The week of February 19th is the next administration, and that's when we can get their bigger picture of where they are based on since they've had true instruction. Because in seventh and eighth grade, it's very difficult to find a skillful math teacher to teach those standards at that level. We can put a sub in, but dealing with skills of that nature, and Mr. Webb is, we can't spread him everywhere, but the support we were putting them on, we got to make sure we put that person in front of them, which they have had that person for weeks now. And after this data, that school came up with their teachers are using their own planning time. The ones who can teach math using their own planning time to teach those kids, and they're doing that rotation. So our February data will look different than our December data. Also look at it like this. I'm giving you all this information to let you know, keeping giving us, I'm never gonna use that word failure in December because this is a temperature check to see where we go. If we watch and don't do anything with these numbers, then I would use that word failure. But right now it's looking at these numbers and say, what do we need to work on in December? Because every district does not give a December metric. So we do put something in place, mid-year check, to make sure that we know what's happening in our buildings, what can we identify to correct those deficits, and that's exactly what we did. And normally Dr. Derry would even put like more intervention teachers in that building for those teachers, or put another teacher in the building with that classroom so we can push them up. But this situation is not the part of an unskillful teacher. It's actually that the absence of a teacher. And that's what we're working on now. And we have a teacher in place working with those kids through Dr. Cameron's office and Dr. Burt's work with Kids First.
So you're saying on that last column, a month from now, double the numbers, so I can
No,
hopefully.
in the last column for that particular map, I would look at Northridge. If Northridge probably would be where they were or higher if we gave them the assessment on what they taught. But because we have district assessments, and we did tell them this when they became an A+ school, we can't, we have our own district pacing guide. We don't have multiple pacing guides. We have one district pacing guide that says all our teachers are teaching sixth grade in this scope and sequence based on the standards. A+ has another one. So if we got them to take an assessment just on what they taught, their numbers should be higher. So if I looked at the numbers except Eastwood, if you didn't look at Eastwood and West Lawn right now, yes, double that number, because those 2+ students are those kids that were right there for proficiency. We should have those kids at that level of the level of proficiency, and you can double or close to double where they are. And that's where our math is, and that's where the principals are too. But I also say this, that assessment is one day out of a child's life, so I never put too much on whatever can happen to them on that particular day, but we want to make sure they get the instruction. But we can identify what standards, and we can give you that too. I can share a folder with y'all. What standard has been taught, what standard kids don't have. If it hadn't been taught, we find out why and what we need to do to work on it with that particular standard. And that goes for every student in this district that is listed reflecting on this screen.
Help me with something.
Yes, sir.
You're gonna have to give me the basic version of it.
Okay.
I would think an A+ plan would be as challenging or more challenging than a district plan. Am I thinking about it incorrectly? Please say yes if I am.
I'm gonna tell you this. Every state standard is the same.
Right?
A+ has a strategy. I would say they have to teach state standards. all the standards are the same. Their strategies are different. So the standards are the same rigor. The assessment is going to be the same. The standards are the same. They can't teach outside of the state standards. So it's not the what you see here is not saying either one is more rigorous. It's saying the particular standard. Give you an example. But Ken gone. Okay, so I'm gonna say this because he can't check me. Because I can't remember the code for a math standard right now. So for instance, 6.23 math standard is on our pacing guide for September through December. On A+ pacing guide, that particular standard isn't taught until February. That means those kids hadn't been taught our standards yet. So it's not necessarily saying either one is more rigorous than the other one. It's that the placement of the standards are different. So A+ did not go along with our pacing guide. They had their own.
Monday for what you didn't learn until Friday.
Right.
So there will be another test where
The third one,
match up.
the third one should match up because that point should be testing all standards regardless, and that's when it's the week of the February 19th. It starts the week of February 19th. Regardless of any pacing guide, all the standards for math will be taught, will be tested. So you'll be able to see where they are based on when they were taught, how they were taught, what standards they were taught.
So end of the year, everybody's had their exact same.
Yes, yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you.
So is there a cheat sheet that would just say like this standard, I'm just saying, and what is in the standard?
Yes, every
So, like,
teacher
if a
has that.
parent was to look at this right now and read this and just say, you know what? There's an 8%. I don't understand. Is there something that I can help? Because I can't speak it like you and Ken. I gotta speak it on the level that I understand to help them to understand.
But there's so many standards. I would have to say, if they go to our transparency in Schoology, every parent has access to every standard that's taught for that week or the weeks that are up front. So we already front load that to parents, so they know what standards are being taught for those classes. So like it'll say it may be like 5 standards taught for these 2 weeks. So it's there for them what those standards are. Now we have, you said a cheat sheet. We have the cheat sheet of all the standards and how is the progression of the instruction. We have that for every teacher, and it's also available on the website as well, based on, and it breaks it down like what the kids should be able to do in this particular grade level during this particular weeks or week. And then we have another document that actually explains like what activities that you can actually work with them on, but it's what teachers work with them on, but it's available for the parents as well. But it's all in Schoology. If they go to their first page, it's on their syllabus.
Anything further for Dr. Pope? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 8B will be our CSFO, Mr. Jay Duke, will now present reports from October 2024 to November 2024. Mr. Duke.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to bring you the financial reports for the month ending November 30th. So at this point, we are 2 months in our fiscal year, which began October 1st and again ending November 30th. So we're 16% into our budget year, and Chris will go ahead and go into the tax reports and take a look briefly at property tax. Don't focus so much on the months. Over the course of the year, property tax being an annual collection. But one thing to note is collections are coming in healthy early compared to the last few years, so that's a good sign. Our budget for property tax this year is $33.5 million. And we'll keep moving to car tag tax, automobile tag tax, and you'll see a slight drop there. It was about flat the previous month of October, but in November, compared to the November last year, you'll see a slight drop, and we'll keep an eye on that. Sales tax, see a slight drop. It was a slight increase last month. So far this year, we've got a 1.5% increase versus the 2 months of last year, so that's a good sign. It's about a $61,000 increase over the 2 months for the previous year. On to the general fund management report, bringing together all of our revenue sources in the general fund and our expenditures. And I've got the expenditures in red, kind of recap there. Again, we're 16.7% into the fiscal year. Overall, our expenditures are 15.6%, so we're slightly below, so that's good. So far, so good on the expenditure side. I want to show you an interesting report that in a joint meeting of the House and Senate committees and the legislature back in November, they showed an interesting report about per pupil funding at the state level. And Chris, if you can just land on that first slide there, showing think of our state foundation program, and this is in raw dollars going back to 2007, 2008. On the left there, the $6,258 number. Of course, then we had the economic downturn in 08, 9, 10, and you see that drop. And then we've slowly come back, and this goes through 2022, and you see an increase in just raw dollars. But Chris, if you'll go to the next slide, this is interesting. Now factor in inflation. And you see that line, that arrow on the first slide now is kind of inversed and going in the opposite direction when you factor in inflation. And you've heard me talk a lot about inflation over the last few years. There it is factored into the state revenue. So legislative session started today at noon. The governor's State of the State address, I think, is going on now. So we'll be tuned in to state funding. A lot of conversations going on there about the funding formula. And so we'll keep an eye on that and try to report to the board from that perspective. I'll shift gears now, and generally at least twice a year we try to give you a snapshot of CNP, which is not in the general fund, it's in the special revenue fund. But here's 2 months of October and November of CNP, our child nutrition program, and just simply our revenues for those 2 months versus our expenditures. Revenues in green, expenditures in red, that's actual. Just for your information, the budget for revenues is $1.85 million or so. Expenditures are about $1.8 million flat budgeted, so we're slightly above our budget on revenues, slightly below what we budgeted for expenditures. All good signs. We certainly appreciate our CNP program and our CNP workers. They do a great job. Last report here is our comprehensive, what we call our state report that gets uploaded to the Alabama State Department of Education, and that's our F2A report, it's called. And this brings into focus our general fund on the left, our special revenue fund, our debt service, capital projects, so forth. The number there at the bottom right seems like a big number, that's $75 million, but notice how it's chopped up in a lot of different funds that are earmarked. For comparison, that bottom right number, that number last year was $64 million. The reason for the increase is we had at one time advancement in technology money that is earmarked that we'll have to spend this year for certain items, think deferred maintenance and capital type projects. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report, but I will certainly be here to entertain any questions or comments.
Questions for Mr. Duke?
Hey, Jay, good report. On the summary report, is it fair to say the difference between the 10.279 local sources we have year-to-date actual versus the 8.9 last year is nothing more than the timing of those property taxes that have come in quicker?
Which one, again, is that, Mr. Hamner?
Yeah, the summary total general fund, the one where you got the revenues and expense comparison percentage?
Chris, can you go back to that one? Is that the general fund management report?
Yes, sir. It looks like that's the only difference, is the timing of the receipt of those local funds, not that more came in, it's the timing.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Mr. Hamner, I think what I hear you saying, and I agree with you, is that it's not so much that we've gotten infused with any additional revenue, it's just the timing of those property tax collections, as we talked about earlier on the property tax slide, have come in a little early. And that may be one large taxpayer that paid their bill, or could be a combination of that. But over the course of the year, that's going to level out, and you'll see back on that property tax report, if you have time to go back through it, over the course of the year, that generally kind of levels out. You'll see through the year, sometimes more comes in one month versus the other, but down at the bottom, you'll notice it's going to land around 30-something million.
Any further questions for Mr. Duke? All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
All right, item 9, introduction of motions, resolutions for a first reading, of which there are none, brings us to item 10, which is the consent agenda. We have 10A, consent agenda item 10A, approved declaring miscellaneous obsolete IT technology equipment. Board may have a motion to approve consent agenda item 10A.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? That'll be approved. Item 11, regular agenda items for final adoption. 11A, approved superintendent's recommendation regarding changes in personnel. Good evening, Dr. Cameron.
Good evening. I have the superintendent's recommendations regarding changes in personnel. I also have a supplemental list. I will go through both with you, starting on page 1. You have 1 retirement, 9 resignations, 2 new support personnel, 1 new certified personnel, 2 reassignments, 29 part-time extended day tutors, 1 declination, 2 24-25 athletic supplements. To the supplemental list, you have 1 resignation, 1 new support personnel, 3 part-time extended day tutors, 3 supplements for teaching during planning period, 1 24-25 contracted coach, and 2 adjunct personnel.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cameron. Board, are there any set-asides for a separate vote? Last call for set-asides for a separate vote. All right, hearing none, board may have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Questions or discussion for Dr. Cameron? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Those will be approved. Thank you, Dr. Cameron.
Yes, sir.
Item 11B, discuss approved central office reduction plan to include revision of the Tuscaloosa City School System organizational chart and job descriptions. Dr. Pope, Dr. Cameron.
Yes, sir. This is a recommendation on what our current reality is in teaching and learning. We've had some temporary movement here. Now we're looking for a recommendation to make permanent moves. This recommendation will save the system approximately $146,000 and decrease the overall expense for the system. So we're looking at a couple things. We're eliminating the current assistant network administrator position. We're eliminating the current social services coordinator position, and that the assistant network administrator will then assume the role of IT security specialist, which we receive state funding for in that respect. We'll change the title of coordinator of people services and attendance to the director of student services. That person's been doing that on a temporary basis. Now we're looking at to making it permanent, and changing the title of mental health coordinator to administrator of social services and mental health. The person's been assuming the responsibility of our social workers. Now we're looking to maintain that, and she will be in charge of social workers permanently if this recommendation goes forward.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cameron. Board may have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second? have a second. What questions and concerns do we have?
Can you give the savings amount again?
$146,000.
And these, the reorganization takes effect with next school year.
Would take effect tomorrow.
And
We're doing it on a
Dr. Cameron
temporary
said this,
basis.
On a temporary basis, we're already operating on this.
Yeah.
We approved supplements at the beginning of this year when those positions were vacated. We wanted to make sure we could operate at this leaner organization, which we've been able to do. So this is just putting those temporary adjustments now permanently. So it would be effective on the permanent side tomorrow.
So we're just, 3 of these, if I'm understanding correctly, are just changing titles. The position is still there,
And some responsibilities.
and some responsibility.
Redistribution of responsibilities that to reflect what we're doing on the temporary basis, that's correct.
If this is something that we're already sort of doing temporarily, I guess my question is, it seems like, people are concerned about this new organization, and, I just would hate to see, if we can keep this temporary state for another, I mean, I guess I would just like the opportunity for more discussion on this. And I apologize for saying that right here and now at this meeting, when I generally like to do these kinds of things beforehand. And if everybody else is comfortable with it, that's fine. I'd like to have more conversation.
We have a motion, we have a second. So, I guess we could have a superseding motion.
We could,
I guess,
Sorry,
Go ahead.
let me interject if this is okay. Look, the temporary solution, I think, is through May of '25, is that accurate?
It is.
So there's no urgency for tonight. I'm not sure what else we need to discuss, but I'm okay to remove it if further discussion is needed as opposed to forcing anything tonight. That is A-okay.
Cause the salaries would immediately on the next check be effective.
No, they're in effect right now.
They're already
Yeah.
getting paid.
They already, okay.
And they're doing the job. Let me be clear, they're doing the
Yeah.
job and they're doing it well and it's working. So we'll find for additional discussion, but I'm okay to pull it back, further discussion. It doesn't change what happens tomorrow. We're just trying to make permanent what's working.
I think that's a great idea. If you okay with that, Dr. Darian, that we do pull it back so that all the board members in voting on it feel it's comfortable to vote on it. And maybe clear up any questions that anybody might have. I know we've talked about it, a little bit, but let's clear up everybody's questions and, make sure everybody's clear on exactly what.
We're good.
Now, I know we have a motion and a second on.
Mr. Chair, I can rescind the motion, no problem.
Well, okay, yeah, and I'll rescind my second.
We'll put it on the agenda for the work session next week.
Can we put it on the agenda for next week?
do we need to table it, Dave?
Well,
Could, but you don't have to. If you have a motion to table it, this takes precedence over the motion and second, so you wouldn't have to rescind. But if you table the motion, you have to take it up to the next board.
Okay, so let's,
Rescind the motion and second, and Dr. Berry rescinds his
you can bring it
recommendation.
back when you want.
Take it back up, whenever Dr. Berry wants to rerun his recommendation.
That would be the best thing.
Which means we cannot discuss it at all. I'm asking, can we ask a question? We getting all in Robert's rules now.
no, I think we need to discuss it.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah, it's one of those two things, and then it's done.
Yeah.
Right, I think it'd be best for us, to get more clarification and, that way, and then we went into a discussion at this point, then we would,
Just keep rescind, was it voted on?
No, it's not.
Okay,
No.
yes, you can't rescind the motion.
right,
If Dr. Berry is willing to rescind his recommendation.
rescission of the motion, we've had a rescission of the second, and I believe the superintendent is willing to remove this recommendation from tonight's agenda. Is that
Yes,
correct,
that's
Dr.
correct.
Derry?
Yes.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, 11C, discuss approve revised secretary, chief school financial officer, and bookkeeper job description.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Cameron?
So this is to streamline and create a more comprehensive job description than we currently have. The last revision was in 2005. And this will create a greater job cross-training optimization. There's no pay revision, and there's no movement on the organizational chart. Just some changes, revisions to the job descriptions.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cameron. Board may have a motion to approve.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Call for a vote.
No,
I'm sorry?
No, we're good. You can keep going, Mr. Chairman.
Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That'll be approved. 11D, discuss approve Ward Scott Morris Architect, Inc. agreement and change of facility for New Heights Community Center Pavilion Playground.
Board members, this is actually two items in one. As I'm introducing it, Ms. Berkeley is going to come forward with her team. At New Heights, this is a recommendation to, one, change the facility by adding a basketball court and a pavilion to New Heights that will benefit certainly our students who are at STARS, but then also the community center component of New Heights. The second part of this recommendation is actually for the architect's contract with Ward Scott to do the work for New Heights Foundation. Before I hand it over to Ms. Berkeley, I want to say that this is the New Heights Foundation that is fully funding this and that is fully doing this. There's no Tuscaloosa City School dollar going to this. This is the nonprofit New Heights Foundation. Ms. Berkeley is our chair of that. And she's got some really, I think, exciting news from Leadership Tuscaloosa, who is doing, I just think, magnificent work to accelerate our work at New Heights under the leadership of Ms. Berkeley. So, Ms. Berkeley, I'm going to hand it to you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Daria. Also, President Wilson and the Tuscaloosa City School Board. My name's Karen Berkeley. I work for Alabama Power Company, but I'm also a member of the current 2024-25 Leadership Tuscaloosa class. To begin with, I'd like to just take a quick moment. We have some of our class members here this evening and let them just stand up and introduce themselves and where they work. So we'll start right back here.
Yeah, Mark Simpson with Shoal Engineering.
Each year, the Leadership Tuscaloosa class is challenged with the opportunity to do a community project. We have 45 members of our class that are very passionate, and they want to do an impactful and meaningful project for our community. So I'm going to turn it over to Nathan and Mark, and they're going to tell you about our project.
Good evening. The proposed project is a 55 by 100 roughly basketball court outdoor with a 20 by 30 open air wood frame pavilion. We'll have to do some light site work, obviously concrete more than likely on the basketball court pad for the pavilion. Stained members is going to look really good once we get finished with it. And Mark, I don't know, you want to talk anything on the engineering side of things, but I think it will be a landmark place and further the New Heights organization anymore. So,
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to what Nathan's presented. From an engineering standpoint, it's a relatively straightforward project. It's going to be located immediately adjacent to the parking lot there, paved parking lot. So
we've got a nice open, flat area where there was a playground years and years ago, so it kind of makes sense from an access standpoint and proximity to parking. So, yeah, with the engineering, I think we're moving forward, and we'll be able to move forward pretty quickly once the board considers it.
One last thing, I know that you're concerned about the funding. I think you may see in the proposal, the project cost is between $50,000 and $77,000. We are excited to be fundraising right now. If you would like to contribute, it is a tax deduction for you. So it will be run through the New Heights Foundation, which is a 501c3. We're real excited. We have raised right now, before we've even sent out our notices to our class members. I wanted to wait until we got your blessing tonight, but we've raised $13,000, plus Tony's company is going to donate all of the lumber. So we are so excited to do this, and we hope you vote yes tonight.
All right, thank you. Board may have a motion to approve.
Second.
Number one, thank you guys for showing up tonight at our meeting. We appreciate seeing faces with names and certainly attendance and passion. We appreciate you guys being here tonight. We really do.
And
This
wait,
is awesome.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
No,
Way
go
to
ahead.
go, leadership class of 25. Way to go. Oh my God! When I did leadership, our project was in the classroom. We wasn't big like this, so that's amazing. Thank you all so much.
Very exciting,
Yes.
thank you.
This is great for you as a group, an organization like this that is from all over our community to give back to the city and the city schools, because from years, students will be able to enjoy things that you helped put in place. And we greatly appreciate that. That just means so much to us in the system.
Yeah, that's a big.
And these types of ideas and community partnerships is what it's gonna take, specifically the next couple of years, so awesome.
Yes, so
Thanks
can
for
we
getting outside
ask,
the box.
can we ask Calissa just to come, because we have viewers that may not understand what the New Heights Foundation is. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but the world doesn't. And then, this was part of, where they're up under the umbrella of the zone.
Right,
You got your 2-second plug, cause they like ready to go home, but.
right.
It's an opportunity.
We're truly excited because these folks are developing something that we can use as a community down there. And then we hope that it will become a place for families to meet, and hopefully, long-term, we'll add even more things to make it more attractive so that our families will see the New Heights Community Center as a hub for all kinds of family gatherings and sports and good, healthy activity. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
All right, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Be approved. Item 11E, discuss approve award Scott Morris Architect, Inc. Stars Academy renovation agreement for Tuscaloosa City School Children's Center.
Good evening, board.
Good evening, Mr. Smith.
This is an agreement with Warren Scott Morris to support the facility move for the Children's Center from Brewer Porch to Stars relocation. This will happen during the end of May timeframe. And make it
Okay,
happen.
board may have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Questions for Mr. Smith?
What's the rough breakdown between ETF funds and general funds? You know? It's got two funding sources, roughly.
Well, I'm not, maybe.
ETF, super,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Yeah. Perfect, thank you, great job.
Mr. Chair, I just would like to say to Dr. Daria, Mr. J. Duke, Mr. Smith, you all have, thought outside the box to make sure Brewer Porch is secure. We have went through some obstacles, you know, and now we back here, and I appreciate that, because, you know, some school systems or some people would have just said, forget it, but this school system definitely has, did all we can do to make sure Brewer Porch is still moving forward. So I appreciate, on behalf of the board, we appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
All right, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? That'll be approved. Item 12, there's no unfinished business to attend to. General announcements. Does any board member have an announcement?
I do. And Mr. Smith, before you sit down, I just wanted to say, and I don't, and we may have addressed this, but I think during the cold days, we had some issues or concerns. I thank your team for being on spot, for addressing all of them and keeping our babies warm. I know we had some challenges with getting some parts in, but thank you for the days that school was out. I know we're into February saying thank you, but we still have had some bad days in January, and I think I hope we have addressed all the needs, even though the day we need the air on, it ain't working here, but I hope we got everything resolved and fixed.
Yeah, thanks for dealing with us, Mr. Smith, even when you off.
Board, we have
I know it's not customary, but I do want to publicly thank our facilities team.
Oh, yeah.
They were doing so many things that were getting calls. We were chasing down mailmen for parts. So I want to publicly thank them and all the people that helped, especially some of the principals who stepped up and really coordinated efforts to support us. So,
And
thank you.
is everything been resolved? Even though we're not,
Changes daily, but yes, the big problems came back online as late as, I think, yesterday. We got parts in and got, especially Central Elementary, up and running. But they're addressing things daily, so thank you for that. We do have a fantastic team.
And board, we have,
Go ahead. Board members, we all have a blue folder, and, we have a work session coming up. This is a working work session. You have homework. Please open your folders, read all the information, come in with some ideas and things. Let's not get there and be there, oh, let's think, no. Think about it, look over it. It is vital to the future of our system that you look at this before the meeting. Have some ideas, please.
all right, anything further? Hearing nothing, we'll stand adjourned.